I'm used to being in a lot of locker rooms. I do a lot of work for sports. It doesn't always smell this way. And so, first and foremost, I want to say it's an extreme honor and privilege to be before you. Every opportunity I get to speak is something that I can never take for granted simply because I never saw myself doing this. And so every opportunity I get to do it, it comes with a heavy level of reverence and gratitude and respect. And so I'm a big believer in intentionality, with spirit, with mindset, with disposition, and with approach. And so whether I'm home in Atlanta with my wife and we have 2 children, 11-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter, 11 months apart, Irish twins, give us a run for our money every day of the week. Get that call if you got to. If it's your kids, make sure you get that. But every day of the week, right? But when I travel, I start my day off in a similar fashion with quote cards. And so I want to read a couple to you guys so you can get a sense of what I'm speaking of. And the first one reads, "A diamond is a chunk of coal that did well under pressure." The second one reads, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials." The last one reads, "My first word of advice is this: say yes. In fact, say yes as often as you can. Saying yes begins things. Saying yes is how things grow. Saying yes leads to new experiences, and new experiences will lead to knowledge and wisdom. Yes is for the brave, and an attitude of yes is how you will be able to go forward in these uncertain times." And so I'll never forget, a few years ago, pre-pandemic, different city, different state, traveling, different sectors, sports, education, corporate, and I had a trip scheduled to College Station, right? And I had a connecting flight in Dallas. And so when I got to Dallas, I would always text and update my wife on my travels, let her know how things are going. Me and my wife, we've been at it since 5th grade, 10 years old, so this is my girl. You sneak in her grandmother's back door, this is my girl, right? And so I get to Dallas, everything is going smooth and great, and I start to text my wife, letting her know everything is going smooth and great. And as I'm getting in line, I'm handing my boarding pass to the gate agent. And right when I look up, I see the pilot. And the pilot is coming off the plane, walking at a pretty brisk pace, had his briefcase in his hand. And so right when he got next to me, I said to him in a joking manner, I said, "Hey, brother, where you headed?" I said, "The plane, that way." He said, "We hit a bird." I was like a little bird? Like, "Yeah, a bird." I said, "No disrespect to the bird, but the bird gone, right? Like plain bird, that's no match." He was like, "Yeah, but things can dent the plane. Sometimes blood is on the plane. Like, it's just a protocol we got to go through, right?" He said, "We just got to sit down and wait it out." I said, "Great, man. I travel a lot. Would you mind if I sit beside you? I just want to understand the protocol." Guy was nice as all get out, introduced himself to me, and he says to me, "Inky, we'll be fine unless they bring the plane tow truck." He said, "If they bring the plane tow truck, we'll have to wait maybe 2.5, sometimes even 3 hours." Right? Been traveling over 16 years, never heard of a plane tow truck in my life. Within 3 minutes, what do you think showed up? A freaking plane tow truck, right? 3 hours go by. We board a new plane. We're on the runway, start to pull off. Pilot comes over the intercom, and he says, "Guys, I hate to inform you, but we have to go back to the gate." And everybody on the plane was like, "Yeah, he's probably joking." And then he follows it up and says, "No, they forgot to load the luggage." That's what the people on the plane say. And then they lose it. And I believe I had the maddest guy on the plane sitting next to me. My man starts smacking the seat, smacking the wall. And he was so mad, he was starting to make me mad. I don't even like getting mad. All right? And as we're pulling back up to the gate, I say to him, "Brother, I just want to see who forgot to load the luggage. Like, I just want to see." And as we're pulling back up, I'm looking out of the window, and I spot the luggage bin. Right? 2 gentlemen on both sides of the luggage bin. Remembered it vividly. One guy had a Sprite, other guy had a Dr. Pepper. Right? And they were doing the floss dance like my 11-year-old son. And I was like, "Oh, they're living La Vida Loca. There's no luggage on the plane." I said, "It's not even phasing them." And I said to the guy beside me, my challenge wasn't that it wasn't any luggage on the plane. Like, that wasn't my challenge. My challenge wasn't even that we had encountered a level of opposition and adversity. That wasn't my challenge. My challenge wasn't even that we had encountered a level of uncertainty, right? Because I'm not one of these people that get up and live my life every single day as if I'm in Mayberry, right? And I'm not going to encounter any change, any opposition, I just don't live my life, or I don't think that way, right? My perspective doesn't go to that place. I said my challenge is this. If we're not careful, sometimes as people, we can live our lives and we can be so casual that when opposition arises, when a challenge arises, when life is asking more of us, uncertainty arises, we just feel as if, man, when it arises, I'll be ready for it and I'll rise to the occasion. And I think we all know in life, we don't rise to the occasion, we revert back to our training. Meaning the individuals that we were prior to the opposition, prior to the challenge, prior to the uncertainty, that is the individual that's going to show up in the midst of it every single time. I just tell the guys I play football with every single week, I don't care how tall your daddy is, you got to do your own growing. Right? I think the great thing about character is no matter how skillful a person is, no matter how talented they may be, no matter where they come from, you can't inherit character. Right? Character is something that has to get up every single day. You got to cultivate and you got to build it through opposition, through challenges, through adversity, and through uncertainty. My favorite quote in the world is Dr. King's quote that says, you judge the true character and caliber of a person not by where they stand in times of comfort and convenience. You judge the true character and caliber of a person by where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. I feel extremely fortunate. I encountered an injury years ago, September 9th, 2006 to be exact, behind the game of football and almost lost my life behind it. I feel extremely fortunate. I woke up the next day, my life was never the same again. Paralysis in my right arm and hand, staples in my body, life had totally changed. From something that I did from the time I was 7 years old until I was 20 years old. And in the blink of an eye, I lost it in a moment. When it looked as if everything I had been working for was about to manifest and produce fruit, right? The process that I had been locked into, the sacrifice, the dedication. And I go out one day and do something that I literally did almost every single day. And for some strange reason, on September 9th, 2006, the outcome was totally different. And so I say to people, when they say things like, I'll get to it next week, I'm like, who promised you that? I'll get to it a month from now. I'm like, man, who promised you that? Right? I'll get to it in a few weeks. I'm like, man, who promised you that? Right? The perspective of I'll be promised something in a week, a month, or a year from now, and not understanding or approaching things with the perspective and the spirit of giving everything we got to the present while we have the present. And so I was born to a mother at 16 years old in inner city Atlanta. Right next to the old Braves Stadium, big Braves guy, and she took me back to 125 Warren. At 125 Warren, it was a two-bedroom home, and there was 14 of us living there. And me and my cousin slept on pallets, right? One of the best times of my life. And I remember one day we're playing football in the street, and I say to him, man, if I make it to the NFL, maybe we can get our own beds one day, right? Just wanted us to have our own beds. If I make it to the NFL, maybe I can pull my mother off the double shift at Wendy's. If I make it to the NFL, maybe I can give my grandmother a better living condition. And their response was, yeah, Ink, that sounds cute, but nobody in our family has even graduated high school. So it sounds good, but chances of it happening are slim to none. I say, yeah, but if we want it the way we say we want it, we'll come out and we'll work for it. Right? At the time, I was a kid, and so the perspective didn't go very far, but I understood at an early age I had to engage in consistent action every single day if I wanted to produce a certain level of fruit in whatever it was that I was doing. And so every single day, the routine was simple. Light pole to light pole, 10 minutes when the street lights came on before we had to be in the house. And one night, we're getting after it, playing ball in the street, and something amazing happened. Getting after it, street lights pop on, and it's a blue pickup truck at the corner. Now, I'll never forget it. I had the ball in my hand. I stand on the sidewalk. 3 younger cousins stand on the opposite sidewalk. I'm looking at the truck. I start to waving by. I'm like, come on, man, I got a couple moves I want to put on these jokers. You're driving too slow, man. And the guy was driving extremely slow. And he passed us slightly, and he parked on the curb. Out of the truck gets this guy, walks over in between our game. He says, hey, man, would y'all like to play football on grass? I said, brother, I would love that. The street's getting rough. He said, go in the house, get your parents, get your guardian, let me speak to him. I went in the house. My uncle was present. My mother was at work. I said, hey, Uncle, will you please come and speak to this gentleman? Uncle said, sure, man, no problem. Uncle came outside. Guy extended his hand. He said, hey, man, my name is Trey Hurst. He said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not even supposed to be over here. I dropped the kid home a couple blocks over. I was leaving the neighborhood, and I see these knuckleheads playing tackle football in the street. He said, I run a program across town. I think if you bring the boys out, sign them up, it'd be a great opportunity for them, and it could really help them. Uncle responded, sir, we greatly appreciate it. He said, but I hate to inform you, we just don't have the money to spare on anything like that at this moment. He said, Inky's mother, she's a single mother. She works a double shift. She don't have it. The other three, their fathers are in and out of the system. They don't have it. The guy, without any hesitation, says, I tell you what. He said, you bring them to the park tomorrow. I'll sign them up. I'll pay for it with my own money. I tapped my cousin's leg. I said, bro, he hasn't even seen my spin move yet, bro. What type of guy is this? He ain't even seen my best stuff yet. Right? And we would get to the park the next day, and I would soon find out he wasn't just paying for me and my 3 younger cousins. He's paying for kids all across Atlanta. Guy was wildly successful. He worked for a construction company in Atlanta called Kofor Brothers, doing extremely well. Didn't have to be a little league coach. He was doing it as a give back. Just wanted to help kids. They placed me on his team. I started to watch him, watch how he treated people, watch how he engaged with people, watch how he dealt with people, because I didn't have a father and a male figure in my life consistently at that time. And so one night, they wouldn't let my mother off her shift, and she called him. And she said, Coach, they won't let me off my shift. Can you please take Inky home? I said, sure, no problem. And he used to drive this truck, and he had a camper on the back, so all the kids used to want to ride with him all the time. So he came to me, he's like, Ink, I got to take you home tonight. They won't let your mother off her shift. I was like, great, man, I get to ride in the camper tonight, right? And we pull up to my house, 125, and I get out. He says, all right, Ink, I'll see you tomorrow at practice. I said, all right, man. I said, can I ask you something? He's like, sure, what you got? I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I really want to understand this. He opened his door, got out of his truck, walked around, stood directly in front of me. He said, son, shoot your shot. He said, first and foremost, you can't disrespect me. He said, son, I love you. First man to ever tell me he loved me. He said, what you got, Ink? I said, why do you live life the way that you live it? Why do you treat people the way that you treat them? Why do you do things the way that you do them? He said, I'm going to share something with you, Ink, and I don't want you to ever forget it. And in its simplicity, it was yet profound. And all he said to me was, as long as you can live your life and make sure that somebody else's life is okay, he said, son, your life will always be okay. And he got in his truck and he left. And it changed my perspective about everything I was connected to and everything I was afforded to do. I stopped viewing a game of football as just a sport, and I started viewing it similar to how I viewed the stage. It was a platform that I got provided to cultivate a certain level of excellence and greatness. So one day when I was done with the game, it would be certain things I could extract from it to apply to other areas and aspects of my life to make me somewhat of a decent human being. I still talk to that guy every Monday at 5 a.m. till this day. I encountered him when I was 7 years old. Like me and my family got robbed on Christmas Eve when I was a kid. My mother didn't call the pastor at the church. My mother didn't call a deacon at the church. My mother didn't call a teacher. My mother called Coach, who worked in construction. Me and my cousins had one pair of shoes for Christmas. One of my cousins, he lives here in Denton, Texas. He ended up going to the University of North Texas. All of me and my cousins in that street that day that he paid for to play ball, all of us ended up going to college and breaking generational curses in our family. Never forget, he showed up. Me and my cousins were sitting on the curb. After all our stuff had been stolen, he shows up in his truck, gets out. He had 2 little paper bags like you'll get from the corner store. And said, Ink, I'm sorry, man, I got the call late. It's all I could do right now. I just stopped at the store. He said, don't y'all be out here trying to take nobody's stuff. Man, we're not going to take nobody's stuff. And he handed us the bags. And in the bags, I'll never forget it, it was drawers and socks, right? And he still buys me drawers and socks to this day on Christmas, and I don't even need them. My guy, right? I'll fight a bear for him, right? But just talking about the extension of impact. Because the work that I feel I've been called and commissioned to do It was somebody that saw it in me before I saw it in myself, and that propels my level of belief, my level of commitment and dedication to what I feel I've been called to do. All right, just talking about outside of what we do. Because when I look at it big picture in the totality, we're all in the same business, the people's business, right? And not allowing how we show up and what we do to be dictated by opposition, adversity, or challenges, right? Like the real level of commitment, the real level of dedication, not the counterfeit stuff, not the stuff that's predicated upon if I get what I want, if it goes my way, if we get the correct time, if we can do it, like that, not that stuff, right? But the commitment that says, can I stay true to what I said I would do long after the mood that I've set it in has left? I used to ask guys all the time, can we be committed to the process of what we're doing without being emotionally attached to the results of what we're doing? If the outcome changes, does it change our character, who we are, and what we felt we were commissioned to do? Because for most people, they show up and they operate based upon external factors. And so if it goes their way, they're great. But if it doesn't go their way, for most people, you never know who you're getting, right? I think we all know if we only worked on the days when we felt good, none of us would get much accomplished, right? Everybody knows what to do when the sun is shining. Everybody knows what to do when business is clicking. Everybody knows what to do when they're making money. Everybody knows what to do when there's food on the table. Everybody knows what to do when things are going the way that they want it to go. But I'll never forget being with Kobe before he passed, and he said a quote that was so powerful. He said, every single day I was pursuing perfection and excellence, even though I knew I would probably never catch it. But just the fact that I was willing to pursue it, I would defeat and dominate most of my opponents and competitors because most people would never pursue something that didn't have any guarantees attached to it. Most people need guarantees in order to be great. Most people need to be promised something in order to show up and really be elite and operate at the optimal level. Right? Most people need to be given something in order to really show up and operate with their level of potential and their capabilities. Like I see a lot of people, and I tell people all the time, they remind me of my freshman roommate. Right? I'll never forget getting to the University of Tennessee when I first got my financial aid check. And I got $2,500 and my roommate got $4,000. I had never had this much money before. And I said to him, man, I'm going to the Bank of America at the end of campus. I'm going to put this in the bank, man. I'm going to open up me an account. And he said, nah, Ink. He said, I'm about to go spend this. He said, I'm going straight to the mall. I said, man, you might want to save a little bit of that. You might not see that much for a while. He said, that's the problem. I said, just come with me to the bank, man. I went up to the bank, did exactly what I said I was going to do. He went up to the bank, and then when we left, we went straight to West Town Mall in Knoxville. Walked in the store. Let me get those shirts, those shorts, that hat, those shoes. We get to the counter. She's ringing him up. I'm standing behind him. He hands her the card he got from the bank. She swipes it. Card didn't go through. He looked at me. I said, don't look at me, big spender. Look at her. You the baller. He said, ma'am, can you try it again? The football office gave me the money. I know I got it. She swipes it again. Card didn't go through. He looked at me. I said, don't look at me, big money, tight grip. You the baller. Look at her, buddy. He said, can you try it one more time? I know I got it. Football office just gave it to me. And she swiped it again, and I'll never forget when she swiped it the third time, and she was handing him the card back, I'll never forget what she said to him. She said, you probably got the money, but you haven't even pulled a strip off the back to activate it. I was like, you're a clown, man. I said, clown. Clown. And when you think about most people, you're like, man, you can crush it, but you haven't even pulled a strip off to activate it. Like, not just in a career, in every aspect of life. Like, you can crush it. Haven't even pulled a strip off to activate it. Because for most people, even if they crush it in a career, if you're not careful, it's like when you see an athlete or the challenges when people do something for a long period of time, or when people do something and they do it really well, and they execute at a really high level, and they're extremely skilled. Their talent, their skill set is through the roof. The challenge with that oftentimes is if they do something so well, if you're not careful, and they're so talented, it's like when you see an athlete and they're so talented, if you're not careful, they can become a victim of their own talent. They're so skilled and they're so talented, right, that they no longer value it because they feel as if, man, I could do this in my sleep. right? I've been doing this for this amount of time. I could do this like it's nothing. And they don't value it. I've been working with Tampa Bay Bucks since 2015. I'll never forget when Brady showed up, and I asked one of the guys, I said, man, how did the culture change when 12 came? He was like, man, it's totally different. And I was on the field one day talking to Brady, and he was like, you know what, man? People may think it's cockiness. People may think it's arrogance. He said, but every time I touch the field, from my level of sacrifice, my level of work ethic, my level of dedication and commitment to what I do, every time I touch the field, every time I do what I do, I just expect to win. From the body of work that I put into what I'm doing every single day, I just expect for it to work, right? From the sacrifice, the dedication and commitment, I just expect for it to yield fruit. And for most people, the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. But when you don't have anything invested, and when you don't really work at what you do, and when you don't really value it, the easiest thing in the world, I often tell people, is to give up and to quit. The easiest thing in the world to do is to complain. Don't take no effort. The easiest thing in the world to do is to be negative, right? It takes work to have a perspective that see things on the right side of the coin. You got to fight for that. It takes work to show up every single day, and when things are not playing in our favor, to say, you know what, man, it might not play in my favor right now, but I'm going to still show up, and I'm going to give everything I got to it because I value what I'm a part of. It takes work to have the right perspective, right? And I'm a firm believer that perspective drives performance every day of the week. How we view what we do will always affect and impact how we do what we do, right? I'm reminded of a story about a father and a young son, single father. Working his tail off, comes home one night. His son meets him at the door and says, Dad, I want a job. I want to work. Dad said, what do you want to do, man? He said, can you get me a job at the local grocery store so I can be able to get back and forth to work? It should be no problem. Dad said, sure, but what do you want to do? He said, I want to bag groceries. He said, can you help me get a job? Dad said, sure, man, no problem. Dad goes up, gets the son a job. Son starts bagging groceries. 2 weeks in, son comes home and says, Dad, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I want to do something to make a deeper impact. Dad said, when you bag the groceries, wave at him, tell him have a good day. That should work. Son said, no, I want to do something to make a deeper impact. He said, what do you have in mind? He said, I got these cards that I want to put in the bags. Can you help me make copies? Dad said, sure, man, that should be no problem. I got your back. Dad does it. Son starts doing it at the store. One day the manager comes in, goes upstairs to the team members, says, hey, guys, why is everybody in line 8 in this little kid's line? He said, get on the intercom. Tell them we got 7, we got 6, and we got 5 open. People got on the intercom, hey guys, we see everybody's in little Johnny's line. We just want you guys to know we got 7, 6, and 5 open. Nobody moved. He said, go down to the floor and tell them. They went down to the floor, hey guys, we see everybody's in little Johnny's line. We just want you guys to know we got 7, 6, and 5 open. The people responded, we know. I said, when they stand in line, I want to get that little card that he puts in the bag, man, it makes the biggest difference. I said, people started coming in the store, getting a gallon of milk, loaf of bread, carton of eggs, didn't really need groceries, would come in, get something, be in line on the phone with their friends, like, man, you got to come in the store. This kid does this little deal, man, it makes the biggest difference. And the thing that blew my mind about the whole ordeal was, here you had a kid that drove business to an institution, and it wasn't based upon a business strategy. He never went to him and said, man, I want to improve this, I want to do this. The only thing he said was, I just want to be great with what I've been commissioned to do. I just want to bloom where I'm planted. I just want to be where my feet are. I just want to be present with what I feel I've been commissioned to do. Right? Many are called, few are chosen, and I feel as if I'm speaking to the chosen few, but I think you guys can agree. The quote says, people may forget what we do, people may forget what we say, but people will never forget the way we make them feel. Right? Everything we do, everything we touch, everything we serve, everything is connected to how we make them feel. Right? Like when I'm in Atlanta, my wife want to go to this place every single morning to get a croissant. And I'm like, hey, why you got to go? She's like, yeah, but the lady at the window, it's like my auntie. I was like, but she's not. She's like, but she makes me feel this way. People may forget what we say, people may forget what we do, but people will never forget the way we make them feel. Right? And so I got to be honest. When I got to the University of Tennessee, it was a big deal for me. Right? I was the first one in my family to go to college. Extremely huge deal for me. But I couldn't believe it. Like it was Mayberry. Like I'm like, man, these guys get steak, shrimp, and spaghetti. Like these guys get 5 pair of cleats. These guys get everything they want. I was like, man, all I got to do is be who I say I am and do what I say I'm going to do, and I get a shot. Not at the NFL, National Football League, not for long, however you cut it and slice it. But I get a shot at the great equalizer in life, my education. All I got to do is have the character to do what I say I'm going to do, and I get a shot. Like, it's unbelievable, right? Like, I'm not sure if any of you guys have been in college facilities as of late. They got nap pods. Nap pods. Like, a guy could be walking down the hall, and they're like, oh, you tired? You want to take a nap? There's a nap pod. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And so when you talk character and cultivating it in a controlled environment, I was like, I'm home, right? And I have 2 meetings. And in my first meeting, they say to me, Inky, what do you want to accomplish academically? I said, I want to graduate in 3 years. I said, all right, we'll see what happens. In the second meeting, they said, what do you want to accomplish through the game of football? I said, I want to go to the NFL after my 3rd year. They said, all right, great, we'll see what happens, man. And I come into my 3rd year, and I'm in a room one day, and I'm watching film, 2 big projector screens similar to this, and my assistant coach, a guy by the name of Larry Slade, amazing man, amazing leader, comes in, he says, Ink, I got some great news for you today. And he hands me the first sheet of paper. And he says, man, can you believe you're on track to graduate in 3 years? I was like, awesome. He handed me the second sheet of paper. He says, man, you're a projected top 30 draft pick as a corner. He said, all you got to do, Ink, is go out and play your next 10 football games the way you've been playing it. You'll be an automatic multimillionaire. I dropped the clicker. I ran out of the room. I called my mother and my grandmother on a 3-way. I said, listen, after this season, we'll never struggle again. I said, we'll never be without again. Season starts, first game, we execute, we get the victory. I get nominated SEC Defensive Player of the Week. The second game, we're playing against University of Air Force. Tough group, disciplined group, great group of guys. Still the only team I've ever competed against in my athletic career that when the guys were talking trash, they didn't say a word back. So after a while, it makes you shut up because you feel like a fool, right? It's extremely disciplined, man. And we found ourselves in a dogfight, right? And the 4th quarter rolls around, and there's 2 minutes left in the game. Game is basically over. And we break the huddle, and we have called quarters coverage. And so I'm a cornerback, and so my responsibility was just keep everything in front of me, play it back to front. They catch it, make a tackle, just keep everything in front. And so as the play starts to unfold, I'm backpedaling, and I'm watching their quarterback, and I see the guys run like a little switch route, and I see one of our linebackers, his eyes get caught inside, and he blew his assignment. And when he blew his assignment, his guy was running free down my sideline. And the quarterback goes and he releases it, guy catches it, and I go to make a routine tackle. And at the point of contact, when I hit him, something different happened to me that had never happened to me before in my life. At the point of contact, when I hit him, it seemed as if every breath in my body left. My body went completely limp. I fell to the ground and I blacked out. Never experienced anything like that. Been in a lot harder collisions. When my eyes opened, I remember my teammates running over to me. They said, Ink, get up, let's rock, let's go. I said, I can't. They said, what do you mean you can't? You always get up. I said, come on, man, you're captain. I said, I know, man, but I can't move. There's a shock going from the crown of my head to the bottom of my feet. I can't feel anything. One of the scariest moments of my life, the shock eventually left, and it stayed in my right arm and hand. I remember they brought the spine board out. They put me on the spine board. They're wheeling me off the field. We get to the ambulance. My father was standing there. I remember saying to my father, Pops, I got him, right? I put it on him, right? He said, yeah, but I think you got the worst part of this one. They rolled me up in the ambulance. Doctor said, we'll get you over, run a couple tests at the hospital, put you in a room, let things get settled. You'll be fine. They get me over. They run their tests. They put me in a room. Never forget, my mother comes in. She kisses me on my forehead. She cracks a joke. Says, Ink, you'll be good. It's ball. Things happen. And she goes to exit the room, and I'll never forget, my mother exited the room. She made a left. And when she made the left, I remember flipping my head back to the left. A few minutes go by, and I see the head doctor. And he was running in my direction, and he was screaming. And I'll never forget him saying, guys, get in here. Got to rush this kid back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. And I remember thinking, like, maybe he's jiving me because I had been there for a while up until this point, and everything had been calm and cool. So my response to him was, like, die, like, away from your die? Like, die? He was like, yeah. I said, man, what happened? He said, we went in to run the test, and we looked at it. We noticed you've ruptured your subclavian artery, which is your main artery in your chest, and you're bleeding internally. He said, we got to rush you back and take the main vein out of your left leg and plug it into your chest in order to save your life. He said, well, I guarantee you, you won't be alive in the morning. You'll bleed out. So let's go. And the next morning I woke up. I had 6 incisions down my left thigh, 1 incision across the left side of my neck, 1 across the right, twice through my right ribs, cut out my right pec, bottom of my armpit to the bottom of my hand, 350 staples in my body. They bandaged me from my neck to my knees. They said when we went in to repair the artery, we noticed you had torn the nerves in your brachial plexus. I said, what's that? They said it's the nerve roots that go from your spine that control shoulder, arm, hand, fingers. They said, we hate to inform you, but your arm and your hand, possibility, never be the same again. Football career, possibility, it's over. So we're going to let your coach come in and talk to you. Philip Foreman comes into the room. He says, Inky, something traumatic has happened to you. He said, it's unfortunate. He said, we're going to unenroll you and we're going to send you back home to Atlanta to be around family and friends. I said, Coach, I greatly appreciate that, man. I said, but I'm not going back to Atlanta. He said, yeah, but you can't play. I said, this isn't about a game. He said, so what is it about? I said, me staying true to what I said I would do. He said, what do you want? I said, can you order me a Dunjoy sling and a Velcro strap? He said, why? I said, so I could go back to practice with my teammates. He said, you can't play, Ink. I said, this isn't about a game. This isn't about an outcome. He said, what is it about? I said, I never said I was going to be a great teammate unless my right arm and hand got paralyzed. I said I was going to be a great teammate. I never said to my mother and grandmother, man, I'm going to be the first one in this family to graduate college unless my right arm and hand gets paralyzed. I said I was going to graduate college, right? It wasn't parameters on the process based upon opposition, adversity, uncertainty, or roadblocks, right? I was back at practice Tuesday. They saved my life Saturday. It wasn't based upon an outcome or NFL. People often ask me, man, what was your best experience? Like, what did you value most? Playing in different stadiums was great. But if you ask me what I miss and what I value, I miss what we got in this room. I miss that. My guys, my team, my unit, being connected to something that was a lot greater than any one of us. I miss that. Showing up at 5:30 a.m., having a countdown clock, and running 110s. And when one of my people got ready to quit, I would say, hey, brother, rip my passion until you get strong enough to possess your own. I got you today. And they would do the same for me, being connected to something that was a lot greater than any one of us. It wasn't about an NFL. That was far-fetched. Yeah, I want it, of course. But when it was no longer in the picture, that didn't dictate how I showed up every single day. It was par for the course. Adversity causes some people to break and other people to break records. The same boiling water that softens the egg hardens the potato. It's about what you're made out of, not the circumstances. Somebody comes up to me every single week and they say to me, Inky, be honest with me. You said you wouldn't change what happened to you. I'm like, I wouldn't. They're like, come on, man. If you could be in the NFL right now making millions, playing as a corner, you wouldn't change it? I'm like, nope, I wouldn't change it for nothing in the world. They're like, what about the atrophy in your arm? I'm like, definitely. They're like, you got a paralyzed right arm and hand. I'm like, I know. I live with it every single day. I'm well aware. And then they always say to me, why? Why wouldn't you change it? And the reason I wouldn't change it is because of the 2 years that happened after my injury, right? The 2 years of soul searching. I got placed in a 2-year process, and with a brachial plexus injury, it's not like an ACL, it's not like an MCL. The great thing about it is nobody can give you an answer. Nobody can say 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. There's no timeline. It's basically show up, we'll try this, and we'll see what happens, but you have a window of 2 years or naturally north of 2 years to see if anything is going to come back. I remember them telling me, go to 10 people you love, see what they think, tell them about the process, and come back and talk to us. I went to 10 people I knew loved me. I told them the situation. all 10 said, don't do it. I said, why? They said it has the possibility to crush you. They said, why would you approach something and they can't guarantee you anything from the process? I said, man, I thought that's what a warrior was. Right? I thought that's what a true champion was. Somebody that can show up and work solely on the basis of their integrity, their dignity, and their character. Right? I thought that's what a true champion was. Somebody that valued what they did, that didn't need any guarantees in order to show up and operate at the optimal level. And so I went back to them. I said, sign me up. They said, are you sure? I said, 100%. And every single day I would go and they would have a different device. Because at the time I couldn't feel anything in my upper torso, inner left thigh, or my arm. And every time I would go up, they would have a different device and I would try it. And every time I would get up off the table, they would say to me, come back tomorrow. And I remember being a year and a half into the process and nothing was working. And they called me one day and they said, Inky, man, we think we got the device, man. We think this is going to work. And they would always put me on a plane from Knoxville, Tennessee to Rochester, Minnesota to go to the Mayo Clinic. Right? They would shoot dye in my back with these long needles. It was a tough process. They said, we think this is the one. Now, I'll never forget, I get there. I'm excited. I'm stoked. The people around me are stoked. I go into the office. They have this device. They have an arm skateboard. We try it. They're looking at the test. And as they're looking at the test, I run over to my PT. And I'll never forget, I grabbed the shoulder. And when I grabbed the shoulder, he slowly slid from under my hand. And he started to walk off. And me and these guys was tight up to this point. And when he started to walk off, I jogged and I caught up to him. And I grabbed the shoulder and I slowly spun him around. I said, JD, what's up, baby? And he was crying. He said, I'm sorry, Ink, but we're not seeing anything. He said, that arm and that hand will probably never work another day for the rest of your life. I said, physically. He said, what do you mean physically? I said, physically, JD, I'm out of commission, man. I said, physically, that right hook is gone, JD. I said, but I will use this arm and this hand every day of my life for the rest of my life by the way that I live my life because I would never allow a situation or circumstance to define my life. I said, I dictate how I respond. I dictate what I do with what I encounter. I dictate my perspective about the things I encounter. I dictate what I can control. I often say to my guys, man, control what you can control. If we show up and everything that we do is based upon external factors, we'll never be able to operate and execute. But I control my mindset that I bring to an environment every single day. I control the spirit, the energy, and the passion that I bring into an environment every single day. I control my dedication and my commitment that I bring to this thing called life every single day. You see, I'm not one of these people that travel around and try to tell people how to do what they do. I wouldn't disrespect you in that way. I know you could do it like it's nobody's business 10, 20, 30, 40 ways over. Like I know you can do it like it's nobody's business. Know you're the best at what you do. Like I don't try to tell people how to do what they do. I wouldn't do that. But I do understand this to be true. In life, people don't burn out and quit and shortchange because of what they do. In life, people burn out, quit, and shortchange because life makes them forget why they do it. The purpose and the mission of when you see a person in its purest form and they start something and you're like, man, that's incredible. And then you catch them weeks later, months later, years later, and you're like, man, what happened? What happened to the fire? What happened to the drive? What happened to the perspective? What happened to the value that they brought to it every single day? Like I'll never forget trying to control every aspect of the process, right? Because most of the time as people, if we encounter something that we don't like or it places us in uncharted territory, a level of opposition, adversity, we want to control it based upon the foundation of fear. Right? And so for me, I had an injury. My arm no longer worked. I could no longer play. My dream was deferred. And so the next best thing I said was, man, I'm going to become a coach. Right? I'm a coach ball. I love it. I can impact people this way. Let's go. I start down the path to become a coach. Out of all the people in the world, I ended up on Lane Kiffin's staff. My God. And I'm in the office one night making copies, 2 a.m. Years after my injury had happened, on the copy machine, my wife calls. Pick up, her voice is trembling. Say, hey, what's up, babe? Everything good? So, yeah, everything's great. I say, you sure? I say, yeah, everything's good. She said, how are you? I was like, I'm great, making copies. And she says, Ink, I'm pregnant. And it scared me so much, I was like, how'd that happen? Scared the life out of me, right? I was a graduate assistant coach. I had no money. I was like, man. She said, you know how it happened. She said, you got to make a decision. I was like, I got you. I went in the coach's office. I said, Coach, man, wife's pregnant, man. I want to move back to Atlanta. I want to be there when my first child is being born. I said, my father wasn't there when I was born, and that's pretty important to me. He said, you should. I said, that's the right thing to do. You should. Next morning, I get up. I make a call to the rec center that I grew up in. It wasn't the same people working there. And when they picked up, I said, hey, man, Inky Johnson, introduced myself. I said, I'm moving back. I would love to create leadership curriculums for the kids in my community. I was like, oh, man, great. Like, you got a job like yesterday. Send your stuff over, send your resumes. Everything is good. All right, at that point, had a master's degree, psychology, loved it. I sent my resumes over, never had a response. So when I got there and I moved, I went up to the rec center. I was like, hey, I sent my stuff over. Don't know if you guys got it. I never got a response. And they was like, yeah, man, we forgot to tell you, you're overqualified. I was like, overqualified? It's a rec center. What are you talking about? I'm overqualified. I was like, yeah, we don't know what to tell you. Right? And I'll never forget, I was in my wife's grandmother's home. 1-bedroom home, 2 blocks away from where I grew up. One of the toughest time periods of my life. Because I was used to being this optimistic guy. I was used to things working out. I was used to having some level of control. And for the first time in my life, I was in a situation and things weren't clicking. Things weren't working. And I couldn't understand how I had been to the highest of the high level of exposure, played college football, had all these resources, had all these contacts, only to get sent back right to the neighborhood that I grew up in, 2 blocks from where I grew up in my wife's grandmother's home. We have our daughter, Jada. Right? Somebody bought my daughter Jada a wagon for her birthday. I remember us putting pillows in the wagon. I remember getting up every single day. Me and my wife would get dressed in the same mirror. She started teaching, and I would go out and I would look for employment. Everywhere I would go, it would be like, we can't do it. And I remember the burden of the situation was just weighing on me. And the only thing I had going for me at the time, I had started writing my book because my grandmother was ill, and I wanted to finish it before she transitioned. Right, now, I'll never forget, we finished it. Me and my wife was in the mirror one morning, and she looked at me. She said, Ink, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. And the truth is, I wasn't. I was about to break. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. She said, it's okay if you're not. I said, no, I'm good. I'm cool. And I went into the room, and the only thing I had was my first copy of my book. I had gotten it back, and I went in, and I grabbed it. Came back into the restroom. I said, babe, you're not going to believe it. She's like, what you got, Ink? I said, you're not going to believe this. She said, what you got? I said, I'm about to head to Chicago. I'm taking a book to Oprah. My wife said, Ink, you know Oprah? My wife been knowing me since 10. I was like, nope. She said, you know somebody at Harpo Studios? I was like, nope. She said, you sure? I said, absolutely. She said, go for it. I had a little bit over $300 to my name. I had a truck with over 300,000 miles on it, and I had a 2X suit. Put it in the truck. I take off driving. I get to Chattanooga. I call my buddy Jeff. Jeff was an attorney, pretty well off. Jeff picks up. I said, Jeff, you're not going to believe it. Jeff said, what you got, Ink? I said, man, I'm headed to Chicago. I'm about to give Oprah the book. Jeff said, Ink, you know Oprah? I said, nope. He said, I know what this is, Ink. He said, one of the things I admire about you, you're extremely ambitious. He said, but the chances of this happening, slim to none. He said, call me when you get to Knoxville. I don't want you to make that drive, waste your money, and be too disappointed because it's not going to happen. I called him when I got to Knoxville. He picked up. He said, you're still going, aren't you? I said, absolutely. He said, stop by and pick me up, man. I'll make the drive with you. We get to Chicago that night. Jeff gets us a room. We get up the next morning. I go to the front desk. Jeff is standing in the corner waiting to go work out. I'll never forget, he was watching me. He's like, man, this dude is serious. And I'm at the front desk, and I'm talking to this lady, this elderly lady. I'm like, can you give me the best directions to Harpo? right? And I could tell she felt so bad for me. She's writing on a napkin, and she was like, good luck, baby. I was like, thank you so much. And I grab it, and I go to walk off. And Jeff says, Ink, wait, man. He said, I'm going to get us a taxi. I'm sure this won't be long. Get us a taxi, we get there, and there's people everywhere. This is when her last shows are happening. We get out. Jeff says, Ink, I'm going to go across the street, get me a cup of coffee. I'm sure I'll be seeing you in a minute. And so I start walking. And I'm circling the building. And whenever a door would open, I would run up to the door and I would say, hey, man, I'm Inky Johnson. I drove up from Atlanta. I just want to give Oprah my book. And they would always be like, man, get out of here. We don't do that. I was like, man, I thought y'all give away houses and cars. I got a book. And I remember getting so discouraged, man. And everybody went into the building, right? And I sat down on the curb, and I was like, man, my wife going to chew me out, man. And I was sitting there, and a gentleman came over. He looked to be homeless. And he sits down right beside me. I'll never forget, he looked at me. He said, man, how are you? I was like, I've seen better days. I said, how are you? He said, man, I'm great. The irony of the situation. He sit there for a couple of minutes. He gets up. He said, man, have a great day. And go to walk off. I'm sitting there and I'm just contemplating. And I look up. I'm coming down the sidewalk. It's Oprah, her security guard. I get up, I fix my suit. I said, surely she'll probably send security up, move me out of the way, but I drove too far. I got to take my shot, right? Got to Steph Curry this joint, right? Long range, baby, right? And so I start walking. They keep walking. I keep walking. They keep walking. They stop directly in front of me. I said, hey, I'm Inky Johnson. I drove up from Atlanta. I just wanted to give you my book. He said, oh, thank you. That's nice of you. Grabs it. She hands it to her security guard. She grabs my suit. She starts shaking my suit. She was like, it's a nice suit. I think she was trying to see if I had a gun or a knife or something on me, right? I said, thank you. She said, I got to get in and do my show, right? I said, would you mind if I take a picture with you? She said, sure, no problem. We take the picture. She said, I got to get in and do my show. I said, all right, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. I go to walk off. Her security says, hey, little man, wait. He said, come here, man, I want to tell you something. Walked over to him. He said, I'm not saying anything is going to come of this. See, I'm not saying book club show. I'm not saying any of that. He said, I just want you to know what just happened never happens. So usually she'll send me up, tell me to move him out of the way, tell him to send it here. She'll never get it. So I'm not promising anything from this moment. I just want you to know what just happened and what you just experienced, it never happens. I said, thank you, man. I greatly appreciate it. I walked off. I sent the picture out, family and friends. I put it up on social media. Everybody's response was, Ink, you going to be on a show? You going to be on a book club? I was like, I don't know. I don't care. They said, what you mean you don't know, you don't care? I said, that moment wasn't about that for me. They said, what was it about? I said, I needed to know that I was still being guided by a source and by a force that was a lot greater than me. But most importantly, I was in a situation that I had never been in before. I was in uncharted territory. And so the same toolkit that I had up until that point, it couldn't get me to where I was trying to go. Every next level of our lives demands a new version of us. And it's a lot of people that haven't updated the software to get to the next level. And me putting myself outside of my comfort zone, it wasn't about Oprah. It wasn't even about the outcome. I put my faith on trial. I put my belief system on trial. I put my level of hope on trial. Just to see if I was still being guided by a source and by a force that was a lot greater than me. I often tell people, people are amazing, man. People are incredible. People are talented, gifted, brilliant. People are amazing, right? People have what it takes more times than not. With any situation that they encounter, people have what it takes. But more times than not, people forget in some situations that we're going to encounter and some circumstances that we're going to encounter, we have what it takes, but it's just going to take everything that we got. I just want one thing from you. As talented, as gifted, as skillful as you are, I just want one thing from you. Never allow life to make you forget why you show up and why you do what you do every single day. Because, go ahead. Because when the clock stops and when it's all said and done, I think we all can agree it's not about anything superficial or materialistic. When the clock stops and it's all said and done, I think life is about two things. It's about who we become, and it's about what we give. And every single day we're blessed with an incredible opportunity to become something great, transform, become something great. But most importantly, every single day we're blessed with an incredible opportunity to give back something great. If we're not careful, let's never become the people that are public successes, but behind closed doors, private failures. Because our talent and our skill set is a place that our character can't sustain us. Let's never allow our dedication, our commitment, and what we bring to an environment and bring to this thing called life to be dictated by external factors and what we encounter. As cliche as it sounds when it says it's never about what happens to us, it's about how we respond to it, that's 100% true. Attitude is one of the most important things that we can possess. I often tell people, when you go through something, be careful how you talk to yourself. Be careful how you speak to yourself. Because how we speak to ourselves, it forms a certain perspective. And the perspective that we have about what we do will dictate our effort, our dedication, and the commitment that we bring into it. Never allow life to make us forget how we show up and what we do every single day. It's my time. God bless you. It was an honor to serve you.
Hey man, we all can be like you. I wish we were all rose-colored too. My rose-colored boy. No heat, no pressure, just hang me in my weather. Now I want you to stop insisting that I'm not a lost cause, 'cause I've been through a lot. Really?
You guys open for that? You guys have a little conversation? Awesome. So I'll curate this. I've got a handheld mic that I can run around, and let's take this opportunity to bring the gold out of this guy. He's got so much wisdom, so much life experience, so much motivation for you. So who wants to be bold? Raise a hand and ask the first question. Yeah? Okay.
Check, check. Mic 2.
This won't be serious, but I got to know, I played Division III ball myself, and you played Division I. What's the funniest thing somebody in the crowd ever yelled at you?
Oh, man, I tell you one of the most funniest things I've seen. So, I know we're in Texas, but nah, I'm not going that way. But, Tennessee, when I was at Tennessee and Alabama was like, oh, man, I'm telling you, he said, Roll Tide, Tennessee and Alabama, like a huge rivalry. When I was there, like, I'm talking about Alabama despised Philip Fulmer. Like, they absolutely, like, despise. Like, I've never seen, like, a hate so strong, right? They despised him. And so my first year starting, we were playing at Alabama. And so Philip Fulmer was trying to prep us for it. Like, man, this environment is going to be hostile. Like, guys, I'm just telling you, get ready. And so, you hear it. You're like, man, yeah, we go in the environments all the time. It's just ball, right? And so when we get there, most of the starters, we show up in buses, and most of the starters, if you ever watch a game, it's mostly the starters that's right behind the coach, right? All the starters, when the coach get off the bus, the starters are going to be right behind him. And so I would say I was the second guy behind coach, right? And when the doors open, you got to walk through literally Alabama guys to get to the locker room. And so they were waiting. I'm talking, I was a sea of just crimson, right? And as soon as the door opens, I'll never forget, we saw a fishing rod, and there was a donut on a fishing rod, right? And it dropped, like this guy's timing was impeccable. It dropped right in front of Philip Fulmer's face, and he swiped at it, and he missed it. Oh, we were laughing like, I'm talking about, it reminded me of that commercial. You ever saw that commercial when the guy had the fishing rod? He's like, not so fast, not so fast. That's what it looked like with Philip Fulmer, and he was pissed. Right? And like when we got in the locker room, I'd never seen him so fired up, and he was so fired up that it kind of got guys fired up. And if you got a team, like you don't want guys too jacked, right? Because you get guys too jacked, you burn so much energy and you can't focus. And he got guys so jacked that guys had like 5-hour energies in their bags, right? So guys started taking them, right? Because they were just so jacked and so fired up. And like the second quarter, I would say half of the team, if you ever go back and watch the Alabama-Tennessee game from 2005, half of our team was cramping up, right? Because of these freaking 5-hour energies, because coach got him hyped because he missed the donut, right? Yeah, and they ended up beating us, man. But that was when I knew, like, college football is real, man. Yeah, they smacked us, too.
I love it. Who else has a question?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's the lady. She's in the back. Yeah, she's right there.
I'll run it to you. Get my cardio in this morning.
Good morning. I want to
Good
say
morning.
I start my mornings most every other day listening to you, so it's been
Wow.
great hearing you live. I live in Knoxville. I was
Awesome.
watching your game when that happened, so go Vols.
Wow, nice, nice.
Question would be, motivational, you do an amazing job speaking and doing what you do. Can you tell me what are some of the challenges and what is it that you enjoy, and do you think you're going to continue to do motivational speaking?
Absolutely. I feel extremely privileged to do what I feel I've been called to do. I feel like it's my life's work, and so I take it very seriously because I never thought or ever imagined that I would be doing what I'm doing. Like I never thought about it for 1 second. Like even after I got injured, I never thought I would speak. Like it was a whole nother story to how that happened, but I just never thought. They put me in public speaking when I first got to college because I came from inner city Atlanta. And so we had almost our own language, right? And I would always say to people when I first got to campus, you know what I mean? Even if I wasn't saying anything, you know what I mean? It was like, no, Inky, you're not saying anything, right? And so they put me in public speaking when I first got there, and I dropped the class on the second day. I was terrified. And so to be doing this today and the encounters that I have, it's extremely humbling. You know, people often think that, you know, if somebody comes up to me and say, hey, man, like this video really impacted me, or I show this to my kids, you know, I'm sure you hear this all the time. It never gets to the point to where I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's extremely humbling for me. And my perspective about life, the reason I'm fortunate as a result of my injury is because it made me not take things for granted, right? Because I literally did this almost every single day. And I go out one day and I do it, and I didn't do anything different or anything wrong. Like people often ask me like, man, did you wear any different pads? I'm like, no, I wore the same pads. Did you warm up different? I'm like, no, I warmed up the exact same way, right? I said, man, I even listen to the same pregame music. Phil Collins, I can feel, that's my joint. And coming in the air, and I hear it today, I still get jacked, right? Listen to the same thing, but the outcome was totally different. And you try to tell people oftentimes like, hey man, don't take things for granted. And oftentimes you can see like people treat it like it's a cute slogan. But when you really look at the raw reality of life, man, you can wake up today and be on top of the world, and you can wake up tomorrow and the world can be on top of you, and you have no control over it, right? That's the raw reality of life. That's the real deal situation that happens sometimes in life with people. And so I always try to press people like, man, never take what you do for granted. And so for me, every time I touch the stage, every time I serve, my career is not just only what I do on the stage. My career is what I do when I meet people in the airport, what I do when I meet people out at stores, right? I like to call them legacy moments. And we're going to be remembered not just by the work that we do, we're going to be remembered from the impacts, the encounters, and the people that we meet and how we deal with situations and how we treat people. I think that's going to speak to our character a lot more than what we just do every single day in our respective careers. Absolutely.
So good. Put your hands together for that. Got time for a couple more. Oh, so many hands.
Hi.
Hello.
UTK, class of 2009.
Nice, nice.
But I love what you said about the way that you talk to yourself is so important, and I absolutely agree. And so I'd love to know, for you, in moments of setbacks, roadblocks, adversity, what do you say to yourself to overcome and control?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I say to myself all the time is just this too shall pass, right? When I encounter situations that I may not understand, that I may not like, that may not feel good, it's going to pass, right? Every storm runs out of rain. Every storm has an expiration date, right? Everything that we encounter in terms of adversity and opposition, it has an expiration date. I have a responsibility to outlast it or figure out a way to use it. And so one of the things I always say to myself is, Ink, be careful how you speak to yourself, but also understand that this too shall pass. And so don't make a permanent decision over a temporary condition. And oftentimes when we encounter things, we make permanent decisions over temporary situations and circumstances, whether it be what we do to somebody, or whether it be how we handle a situation, or whether it be how we speak to someone else. We'll make a permanent decision over a temporary condition. And then we'll get months down the line, weeks down the line, and we'll look back and be like, man, I could have handled that different. Now, nobody is perfect. I think that's the great thing about life. You learn from it. But sometimes we make decisions and we allow our emotions to overpower our intelligence when life places us outside of our comfort zone. And so I think self-talk and having a way to approach and deal with situations to stabilize ourselves, I think is extremely important. Because if we only relied on our talent and our skill set, sooner or later that's going to fail us, right? It's like the talented person that you can see that can run, jump, do all these great things. We've all seen the athlete that can throw a ball 100 miles per hour, and then they get to a certain point and you could just see the end coming. So when we just rely on our skill set and our talents and our abilities, life is going to hit us with something that we don't understand, that's not going to feel good. And we have to have something in place so we can know how to deal with that, no matter how talented or skillful that we may be. But my go-to is be careful how you speak to yourself, and also understand that this too shall pass, but never make a permanent decision over a temporary condition. Absolutely.
So go put your hands together.
Inky, this is about something you said, but it might be a little personal. I've lived in this country for 30 years, and I've noticed we've changed about the way we talk about our faith in this country, and we don't talk about it much. But you ended your talk by saying, God bless you.
Sure.
Could you tell us a little bit about why you said that and what that means?
Yeah, it's just, it's almost like, like first and foremost, I'm respectful of everybody's beliefs, right? Like in terms of whatever a person's beliefs are when it comes to whether it's religion, whether it's, religious belief, whatever it is that they practice, I'm respectful of it. But I look at it in terms of when I say things such as, God bless you, or, blessings to you, I look at that as my extension of grace to another person, right? Like I firmly believe, I always say to people, man, always be willing to extend grace, right, to both yourself and to other people. Because oftentimes as people, if we're not careful, we could become so judgmental, right? Like a guy hit me up yesterday morning, and gentleman was older than me, right? Probably 20 years older than me. And he hit me up yesterday morning, and he was asking me for help with something. And so when somebody hits me up and asks me for help, I got my one person that I often talk to about a situation just to see, is my perspective in order? Am I seeing things the right way? Right? I don't just always just judge it based upon my own account, right? I got a person that, kind of checked my blind spots, right? It's like a mirror for me. And a person hit me up yesterday morning and just was like, I need help with this situation, and I won't state the specifics of it. And I was talking to my person, and they was like, yeah, man, this is that. This has been happening a lot lately. And I was like, it's hard for a person to ask for help. Like one of the hardest things in the world is for a person to come up to someone and say, hey, man, you know what? Like I need help with this, right? Or I'm struggling with this, right? But in this particular specific situation, it was a male. It was a man, got a family, got kids, got a spouse. And I shared with the person that I was pitching and catching with, I said, think about how challenging it had to be for him to say that to me, regardless of what the situation is, right? Because as men in society, the bravado, right? The perspective that we have, who we're supposed to be, protectors, providers, right? For our families, how we're looked at, right? Like somebody said something a couple of weeks ago, and it was a comedic joke, but it has some truth to it. It was like if you think about life and you think about the world, and I'm speaking to the specifics because this was a man, and so I'm going to drive the message home and I'm going to land the plane. But if you think about it, he said, if you think about the world, you think about pets, right? You think about women. Most people show up and they get loved unconditionally based upon who they are. He said, when you think about most men, men get love based upon what they provide and what they bring to the table. Oftentimes, right? And so when this man asked me for this, I was saying to the person, think about how challenging it was for his ego, for his pride to be dropped and to say, hey man, can you help me with this? And oftentimes when a person comes to us and say, hey man, can you help me with this? We'll talk to them in a moment, but we'll go back and we'll judge a person. Man, what about their decision and choice? How could they do that? Right? Why do they ask for help with this? Like, I would never do that. Right? And I always say to my friends, like, never say never, because you never know what life will deal you. Right? And so I often say to a person when I say, God bless you, man, or blessings to you and your family, that's my extension of grace to a person. Right? Because I firmly believe we'll all need it at some point during the journey. Right? No matter how great things go for us, no matter how well we're doing, sooner or later we're going to hit something in life. And I think it's important to extend grace, because when you encounter something and we may slip up or we may make a decision that's not reflective of our character, we'll want a person to look at us and say, they're not their decision, and extend a level of grace toward us. And so my beliefs and what I'm guided by, first and foremost at the foundation of it, is just me walking by, man, and extending a level of grace to create a level of rapport, to let them know that, man, I'm not here in judgment, I'm here in love. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we got time for one more here.
Inky, good morning.
Good morning.
A couple of things. One, thank you for your transparency, how genuine you are, just the inspiration that you instill.
Thank you.
The question is, when you think about books, podcasts, speakers, what inspires you?
Man, it's a lot that inspires me, but I kind of think about the people that, you know, that I was inspired and impacted by at a very young age that still impacts me until this day. And so, like my coach that I spoke about, that stopped in the street and signed me and my cousins up to play ball, you know, full transparency, he was the first white guy I ever met in my life. Right, like I'll never forget, when he got out of the truck, like my uncle was on the corner. My uncle took off running from his illegal activity because he thought he was the police, right? He's like, hey, don't talk to him, right? Guy's nicest guy in the world, right? And came and impacted and did things for me and my family that he didn't have to do, based upon how he lived his life and how he got up and did what he did every single day. But I would say nobody has inspired me more than my mother, right? Because my mother, when she had me, my mother was a single mother. And she taught me a lot, right? Like she taught me, I'll never forget, she would always say to me every day, like, Ink, the world don't owe you nothing, right? I don't care if we growing up, 2-bedroom house, 14 people, so what? The world don't owe you a thing. If you want something to happen, you get your butt up and you make it happen, right? And I watched her work 2 shifts and she never made an excuse, right? I remember being in a Buick Regal with my mother, hubcaps off the car. I remember watching my mother scrape together change and money to get me my first pair of cleats, right? And it taught me a lot about how to live my life and how to treat people, right? She never really dogged my father. She didn't care for him, but she never would dog him in front of me. And one of the things that happened was they could never be in the same room because my father would feel tension. And when my injury happened, they had to be in the same room because they didn't know if they were going to have to amputate my arm. They didn't know any of that. When they were in the same room, I'll never forget my father thanking my mother, right, for raising me the right way, how she treated certain things. And that impacted me. And so nobody has inspired me more than my mother, right, because I'm careful of looking at a person or looking at certain things because I've came in contact with a lot of counterfeit in the world, right, to where when things are great, they're great and they treat people great, but when things are not so great, they don't always treat people the right way or say the right things. And so I kind of judge people based upon merit, how they live their lives, and what they do. Because at the end of my life, when it's all said and done, I don't want people to come up to my children and just speak about me as an athlete. I want people to come up to my children and speak about me as a man and how I live my life, what I did, how I treated people. Does that mean perfection? No, nobody is perfect, right? But I have to continue to fight the good fight and continue to press to try to be a great person every single day through the several vehicles that I feel I've been commissioned and called to serve and do what I feel I've been called to do. And so just trying to be a good human being, but my mother inspired me the most. Absolutely. Thank you, bro.
Awesome. Appreciate you, brother. Hey, what is one final thought or encouragement that you want to leave these guys with?
One final thought of encouragement that I want to leave you with is never not appreciate the fragility of life, right? Because oftentimes, and I think like this because of what I encounter, obviously, and so it put me in that space and place. But when you think about life and you get up every single day, always realize that somebody that woke up this morning, they're not going to live to see the night, right? Somebody that got up this morning, they're not going to live to see the night. And oftentimes when we get up and we do the things that we feel we've been commissioned to do, it's very easy to complain, to take it for granted, and to not appreciate it. Let's never be the people that show up every single day and count the hours and not make the hours count. Because regardless of how we feel about it, regardless of what we're doing, regardless of what we're connected to, first and foremost, we have the greatest gift there is, and that's the gift of life. Every single day, appreciate that, and everything comes next.